Well, good morning and thank you very much for coming. I'd just like to thank all the delegates for a start off for coming. I know 2 days is a massive investment for all of you because we're all very busy with very heavy schedules, and thank you for coming. I'm sure you'll get a really good return on that investment because that's exactly what you would expect, of course. I'd also like to thank the speakers because they do say that content is king. And we've got a fantastic lineup of speakers for you over the next couple of days. And thank you, speakers, for the time that you have put into this. There's 35 or so lining up, so that's a good number to go through. As we go through, like all of these events, we can't do it without sponsors. So thank you very much, sponsors. I feel like sort of at the Academy Awards when you thank the sponsors, but it is very important for us in terms of to be able to put on an event such as this, that the sponsors come in behind to support us. With the gold sponsors, Visa and Westpac, Swift, thank you for silver, bronze with BNZ, and Simon Jensen will be taking the CEO panel, so they've been sponsoring that one. TSB, keynote speaker tomorrow with Chris Skinner, and the farewell evening, always one for a drink, MasterCard, and the coffee lounge next door, which I think many of you have participated in already from ANZ, so thank you. Same they did last time. And refreshments by this new looking symbol down here at the bottom. And of course, thank you Verifone for your gravity-defying lanyards. They are absolutely sensational. And I hope everyone's noticed the new logo and branding too for Verifone because that's pretty swish. You'll notice next door the exhibitionists, as I call them. They will be there, so please go through and make the most of that. Have a really good conversation with them. We've got some really interesting people lined up there next door. We've got down the bottom right the Bitcoin Association, so if anything you want to know about Bitcoin, go and see them. On the top right, check those guys out in terms of what they're doing in the digital space with Ipiku, and fantastic demonstrations that they've got going, but there's plenty for you to see through there, not to mention a little museum packed on the back right. You'll see where the technology's gone over the last wee while, and that's always good to see, just to see how far we've actually come and what we've been doing. So let's get on with it. Now remember, we have been great in terms of the New Zealand payment system. Remember back in the days of the flares and the mullets with Databank setting the scene in the 70s and the 80s in terms of what was a really world-class banking system. And then EFTPOS came along later on and made us leading in terms of our electronic payment capability across the country. And then SBI most recently getting more and more money through the system quicker, which is great. And part of that came through the collaboration piece and Kiwis working together to make things happen. So being great's one thing, but actually staying great is challenging, but it is what the customers are expecting from our point of view. So the next couple of days, I'd like us to just sort of dwell on the future a little bit, just to actually reflect on where we're heading and where we're going to, have a listen to those that are speaking, acknowledge some of the pressure points that we're currently facing within the system, and sort of the role that payments plays in the success of the New Zealand economy. And yes, there will be a little bit of time for a bit of networking and relaxation, but not too much, okay? The other thing is, this is about what customers expect. So what do they expect? We did a bit of a street cam, and we'll be hearing from some of our customers.
Via the mobile somehow. There's lots of sort of trends in that area at the moment, but the phone's always in your pocket.
Mobile phones, yes, or having some sort of card on us that just requires a scan or something like that, maybe.
Probably all online, like no banks, like actual physical banks, just, yeah.
Probably more mobile somehow, I imagine you're more used to the phone.
So that's good. Now it's time to get you guys thinking about the future and get you working as well. So what do you actually think the payment system is going to be like in 10 years' time? That's the question that you need to answer right now. So on your tables you will find a questionnaire. Now in this digital age you thought we could have gone really high tech, but every day we are issuing paper payment instruments to new customers across the country. So in homage to the very resilient cheque, you'll find this cheque on the table and flip it over and answer the questions. Just take 30 seconds. What's things going to be like in 10 years' time? And then when you finish those challenging questions, just hand them to one person on the table. If that person could put their hand up, and then we'll come and gather them and we'll feed through the results later on in the chat.
I know
So let's go back a couple of years. Last time we were in this fine establishment, 2012, where we were looking to change the game, and we were looking to ensure that we were always ahead of the curve, which is going to be pushed along by technology and also the whole customer savviness, and bringing that confidence and integrity into that future payment system. And that was going to be achieved through the collaboration, which was a real Kiwi strength. We talked about a couple of future actions that we were embarking on. One was around the new standards in mobile payments. And yes, it was a really strong cross-industry working group that was formed. We developed the world's first in terms of rules and standards with mobile. And importantly, we put the customer at the heart of that because, as you know, that's exactly what they would expect. And now we're quickly filling the gap with HCE off the back of that as well. The other one we talked about was the future of domestic debit. We said that would get people together to find a path in terms of a way forward. Now, we know that's still a work in progress, but I'm confident that the solution will be answered by those of us in the room who will believe that whatever that is developed will be in the best interest of the customer to meet their expectations. So in 2014, when we look back a couple of years, there's one thing that stands out for me that's quite different, and that's the actual pace of that change is dramatically quicker now. Customers expect us to keep in front, to lead, and also for us to be decision ready. And we'll hear a bit about that this morning. I just want to talk a bit about that in terms of being match fit and being decision ready for the decisions that are ahead of us over the next 1 to 2 years. Because what it takes to be great back then isn't what it takes to be great now. And I think there's plenty of analogies there that can help you on this one. This is the old All Blacks, look at that. Now the guy at the end, he hasn't even got off the ground. I mean, that's just absurd. He'd be sacked with in this current lineup. None of them are looking at the opposition. There's no tongues being poked out. It's just not the way in which they play the game today. But now this is the new look All Blacks, which is completely different. So it's need to turn that around and think about it from our point of view as well. The way we play the game today is quite different, and hopefully the people in this room will not be doing any photo shoots like this over the next coming 6 months. But at the core of both of those teams is around integrity, about high performance, about working together, and about being the best. And I think they are still fundamental in both of those things. So enough of the eye candy. Let's talk about what we're going to be doing over the next couple of days. What you will hear about. Right, first up, we've got a panel of New Zealand CEOs, a couple of fresh faces, a few familiar faces, and they will be challenging the industry in terms of what they expect from us as a payments industry. And that will be mediated by Simon Jensen from Buddles. We'll then get on, our Deputy Governor Grant Spencer will join us. Hopefully he's not stuck in Auckland traffic, but I think he's on his way across. Thumbs up at the back. Yep, absolutely, thumbs up from the RB. So he'll have a chat about the regulatory outlook for the country and what he expects from Payments NZ and also the payments industry. We'll then look at how we stack up in comparison with 42 other global payment systems, and we'll be joined by Leo Lippis. Now, just a slight change of program. Leo fell crook last week. Massive bout of pneumonia. Doctor told him he couldn't fly. So he's going to be Skyping in from the other side of the planet. I think it's about 11:30 at night, so if he's looking a bit dodgy and tired, just be a bit forgiving, because it is very late at night for him. But he will Skype in and run through the presentation for us there, which is good. Then we'll have another panel, which is with a great lineup of CEOs of organisations that are currently reinventing themselves and asking ourselves whether that's the answer to meeting and exceeding customer expectations. You'll then have to make a decision. Do I go to the mobile stream or do I go to the fraud and identity stream? That's going to be a tricky one, so we'll work that one out. So make sure you know which one you're going to, because you can't go from one to the other, because that's really, with the doors are opening and closing, it gets quite distracting for the people. So just choose one and sit on there. That should be good. Then we'll also, with NZIA's poster boy, Shamabel Yakov, will be here to talk a bit about the economy, what it means for New Zealand and also the region as a whole. Then we'll go somewhere completely different. There is such cool stuff just happening on our backyard, just hovering up there that not many people know about, and we'll have a presentation from O3B, which stands for the other 3 billion people, and the satellite technology that's really transforming and enabling the whole digital world across the O3B stands for the other 3 billion people. So that's exciting. Then our friends from the Cook Islands, welcome, kia ora. thank you for coming. They will be joining us and just sort of talking about some of the challenge that faces their region and some of the issues that they would look for answers to and support as they go through. And I tell you what, that's just day one, which is incredible. So let's move on to day two. What have we got coming up there? Well, we've got our gold sponsors with Westpac and Visa who will have their keynote presenters talking to us, and that's good. Now that's going to be all things digital and shiny. And when these guys talk about that stuff, they really love the new gear and the shiny bits, and it sort of reminds me of someone. And the next one we'll go on to is Chris Skinner. Now, Chris is a world leader in terms of digital banking, and he'll be here to talk about some of his thoughts and probably a plug for his book as well, I'm sure, on the way through. And then we'll go to the Gates Foundation and the amazing transformation they're making across the globe. Now, it's not about what they're necessarily doing here, but it's about what we can learn from that and bring it back to our region. Have a look at this. So very cool in terms of what they're doing. So that's going to be interesting. Constantine will also be videoing through just for the Q&A bits, but that will be a pre-recorded presentation when he takes the stage tomorrow. Then I'd like to welcome Paula Heath and Chris Hamilton from across the Tasman because they're going to be here to talk about the new payments platform and what's been going on over there and the speed and velocity in which that thing is moving and getting that to market and getting some traction on that. The other thing that's moving like a bullet train is Ipigo in the European market, and what they've actually been achieving there in terms of bringing together quite a fragmented market with their digital proposition. And that's again, is moving like a bullet train in terms of the growth and success that they've been having in that market. From there, we'll get the world experts together to give us some takeouts of exactly what we learnt over the 2 days ahead of us and what are the key takeouts that we should have and take back to the New Zealand market and the New Zealand industry. So now let's stand back a bit and just sort of think about realising the pace in which we're travelling and also the expectations that are being placed on us as a sector. Just have a look at the timeline in terms of what has been going on during the century and just how rapid and intense that pace is happening over that latter part of that period. It's just quite extraordinary. And if you're wondering why you're sort of at the end of the year feeling a bit tired, then there's sort of a good reason for that. There's a lot happening. Also, took a couple of weeks ago, the latest McKinsey report came out, which talks about some of the disruptive forces. And we do talk a lot about disruption within the sector at the moment, but these were the 5 that they felt were the ones that was really going to shape where we're heading over the next 3 to 5 years. Certainly around that digital transformation, we've heard a lot about that. And that whole data, more on the insights, more on the learning, more on what we can actually take from the information that we do gather, but also keeping in balance with that what we are actually allowed to use and what our customers expect in terms of us, in terms of the use of that information as well. Non-card real-time payments, we'll hear about the faster payments getting quicker and quicker. That too is going to be another disruptor for the sector. And the cross-border transactional banking, really interesting in terms of what's been going on in those spaces and how disruptive that will be. Also the next phase of digital banking, and the good thing is that all of those 5 forces or 5 issues are going to be addressed over the next 2 days within the conference. So that from that point of view, you're going to be right up with where those pressure points are at and where those issues are at. So let's talk about payments and what our role is in building sustainable economic growth and also social wellbeing, which is sort of not a role we often think about in terms of how enabling we are as an industry in terms of for the greater good. So let's just quickly look a little bit about the New Zealand story. Here's a quick rundown of some of our GDP numbers. 210 billion in terms of GDP and what that per capita figure is. And then also how we look in terms of our trade, where that's going, and also the different balance of that trade that's happening, particularly around the Australia and Asia Pacific region as well. 120 odd billion worth of trade that's been going on over here. But from our point of view, there's a couple of things that we do need to take stock of, and that is getting plenty of signals from the Productivity Commission, from Treasury, from central government in terms of what we need to be doing. And that's over the next 10 years, need to deliver very material and very sustainable economic growth for the country. And that's both in private and the public sectors. Now, at the core of that is a payment system in terms of the movement of that money around the way. Now, that needs to be moved digitally. It needs to be moved very safely and securely, very fast, and of course at a lower cost, and for our shareholders at a higher profit. So that is a challenge for us as a sector in terms of the role that we play in delivering those productivity improvements. And from that point of view, if you think about it, well, that's what a modern, inclusive and trusted payment system is all about. It's just an expectation, and that's what we need to deliver. And so quite a simple, straightforward ask, really, I would have thought, from that point of view. So if we look also at some of the other things that are going on in the market at the moment, particularly in New Zealand, and particularly some of the operational pressure points that we are currently facing. And it's really important that we front into these and just actually address them as they come through, because they're there, they're real, and they're not going to go away. And it's certainly decision time for us in terms of where we go over the next decade. A couple of pressure points that we'll just trot through. Oversight powers. There will be more discussion on that, but that's about getting the right balance, about getting answering the right questions and problems. We do have some very tired payment methods. I mean, our rules still support a piece of technology that was first developed back in the 19th century. So, we've got a way to go. Some of our systems are tired. And you talked about the dear old check. Well, it's still there, and we're still using it. Our rules do need to have a leap into the future, and so we've been looking through the notion of where the rule set goes, how those standards are developed, and more around that open source notion, which is really quite interesting in terms of how we could actually address those. Another pressure point is the alignment with Australia. Now, this comes up time and time again in terms of how we should be aligning with our mates across the Tasman. Really difficult. We beat them all the time at rugby, so that's okay, so we can take that one into account. But it's just a question that we do need to ask and be very aware of when we make the decision around that. There's a lot of cash in the system still, and we know that cash costs money in terms of the actual putting it through the system. So need to be doing something about that. There seems to be more of it going on. Got a couple of representatives here from the Inland Revenue, and this is very hot on their topic in terms of how we catch GST in this online world, how we get the right tax revenue coming through into the system on all of the transactions that we do make. Another pressure point there is that concentration risk. Yes, it is real within this market, and there's always the scheme versus the local issue that we work through, and it's always on the agenda. Digital identity, we've got that stream on fraud and identity, and again, that's something that putting a bit of pressure on the system, putting a bit of pressure on the industry in terms of how we're looking to address that. Another one, bank and branch numbers. How do we make that as an enabler rather than a barrier? The other pressure, AML and CFT, and some of the unintended consequences that is given in terms of wiping out a tier of players that are actually in the sector. Mobile payments, the global arms race, well, it certainly hit our shores. So that again is something that we need to look out for as a pressure point. Data, how we use it, how we can use it, how our customers expect us to use it, and which is important, and what bits that we do disclose. There's quite a few pressure points, but that's the thing. They are there, they are real, we need to confront them. How do we deal with non-banks as direct participants? We need to crack that one, and we need to crack that sooner than later. And of course, the disruption word. That keeps coming back time and time again. So don't get too depressed. I know there's a lot of them out there, but these are just something that we need to confront, because if you don't confront them, they don't go away. Now, these other pressure points, if you want to know about these ones, just go and have a chat to Henry Lynch. He's our resident Hall of Fame martial artist, so he's a master of Aikido. Knows all about that, don't you, Henry? Where are you? Excellent, thank you. So yeah, he'll tell you all about those ones. So it is decision time for us, and we need to be decision ready. And so the decisions that we make, how we address those pressure points over the next 1 to 2 years is going to be really important in terms of what our system looks like over the next decade and beyond. So what's Payments NZ doing about that? Just a quick recap on payments. We're 4 years old now, which is really cool. We can now wear long trousers, which is even better. And just to recap on our participants, so you keep up with that, and just like to welcome the Industrial and Commercial Bank of China. They're our newest participant since KiwiBank. So pretty slow in terms of growth from that point of view, but I'm sure that will pick up over the coming years. For us, it's a very transformational year in F15 in terms of the activities that we're doing and in terms of the opportunities that we're looking to provide the industry around forums, ways in which we can deal with intelligence and share information and make the right decisions, but make those together and not separately. I'll touch on 3 programs that we're doing at the moment, just to give you a flavour of what we're up to. Where we're at now is within F15 is sort of trying to make things work a bit better than they have been, exploring new opportunities that are there, and also managing some of the payments that are in decline as well, particularly around cheques and how we do that in a smooth and measured way, and some leadership, particularly around our membership program, and also payments direction. So payments directions is the first one. So we're looking to have a view in terms of how the New Zealand payment system will look like within 10 years' time. And we're working with the industry on that to develop that view. So by about mid of next year, we'll have a very clear roadmap on where we believe, Payments NZ believe that we are going as an organisation and what the context of the industry that will be for. So that's really cool. Great opportunity to have had input into that. And I'm sure we'll all be able to use that in terms of our own organisations and how we plan and how we look forward into the future. The good old engine room. You can't do anything without making sure the engine room's working with our 4 clearing systems. I'll just touch on a couple of activities with our BEX, the bulk electronic system, under optimisation. We will be undertaking some feasibility studies around ISO messaging and also faster or real-time payments. In the KEC space, a couple of improvements in terms of things that we know aren't quite working well within the market, pre-authorisation, those type of initiatives looking at, and also the development of rules and standards around the new mobile and the HCE piece as well. In high value, really looking out a bit further and seeing what's going on around the world and what we can learn and take from that in terms of how we continue to improve that. And the dear old paper, how do we manage that decline in terms of the checks as they go through and manage that, and as I said, in a measured way. From 1 October, Payments NZ has opened its doors up for membership. Hope everyone knew that. If you don't, you do now, and that's good. So from that, that's your opportunity to join us, and join us in the way in which decisions are made, how we view things, and having input into where our programs are going into the future. There are 3 levels of membership. Now, this is an unashamed promotion plug, by the way. There are 3 levels of membership: infrastructure, standards, and industry. So take the opportunity over the next 2 days to talk to one of the team about what that means for your organisation, what we would expect in terms of new members coming in, and also what expectations you would place on us as being a member of Payments NZ as well. But it's the opportunity to participate and the opportunity to join in that's what counts. The other area too that we're looking in terms of is market intelligence. How we use all the information and data that we've got, package it up in a different way and reflect that in a fresh and meaningful way so we can make better decisions on the way through. Here's a quick snippet in terms of how that may look like. If we look at the BEX settlement window activity, you can see there are five settlement windows. On the top layer, that's the first 3. And you'll see the percentage in terms of what amount of funds flow through at each of those times. That's gone from 2013 to 2014. Probably the most noticeable one is the afternoon shift has been declining, so that's good. That shows that the money is being moved through in different times of the day, and that's what we're needing to do, is have a more steady flow through the system, so it's not all lumpy, it's all done at the other end. So just a fresh way of looking at our windows. Another way of measuring it is what the medium time of transaction of processing those bulk payments are. So that medium time means that at that time of the day, before that time, 50% is gone through the system. After that time, 50% will go through the system. So obviously, the sooner that happens in the day, the better it is in terms of the smooth funds flow through the actual system itself. So what this shows is back in September 2013, compared with September of 14, we are doing it quicker and we're doing more. Quite simple. The other thing it shows that we seem to have lost a t-shirt somewhere along the way, because that guy in 2013 is wearing one and the other two aren't. So there's probably something in that with a bit of lycra, makes you go a bit faster. That could have something to do with it as well. But we're definitely moving more through the system at a quicker rate. That's great, because that does have a view and an impact on the economy. And so we've been talking about also the New Zealand and its rockstar economy and what that means. And so you'd expect that as more funds flow through the system, as more is happening, that is a sign of the economic growth. And that's exactly what that has sort of shown us in terms of the movement over the last year, in terms of our bulk electronics, high value, and bill payments, that, yes, over the last year, more value and more volume has been going through, which does indicate a healthy and growing economy. So that made us think, what about the correlation between our information and GDP? Which is, so we had to play with that, with some assistance from some people who actually know what they're doing. And what we have found is that there's a very, very strong correlation between our core payments data and the New Zealand's GDP, where that's going. And what it does indicate also is that the information that we have provides us with a 6-month lead indicator of where GDP is tracking over time. Now that's really cool information. And so we will continue over the next 12 months to dig further into that data and share that with you because we think there's real value in that and real value in knowing what's actually hiding within that, all the statistics and information that flow through our system. So we are a great predictor of GDP, and I think not to brag too much, but that's 2 months better than the ANZ truckometer. No offence, ANZ, but that's what we've been told. So that's a good sign. So from that point of view, I think it's a really important tool that we can use. And just reinforcing the role of payments and what we do for the economy and the economic well-being and growth on the way through. I'm not sure whether we've got any answers to our questions yet. Is that happening? No, that's not happening. We'll share those with you later in the morning, probably around morning tea. So I just want to leave you with a couple of thoughts as you look and sort of think about the future. Think about where you're heading. Think about where you're going. Don't worry, there's not going to be a bunch of cyclists in Lycra going past here, middle-aged men on their cycling holidays. That's going to be a still shot. But I just want you to think about, ask yourself this, as individuals, as organisations, as senior managers, are you decision ready for the decisions that we need to make over the next 1 to 2 years? Because that's going to be really fundamental in what the New Zealand payment system looks like, how it behaves and how it's going to respond to the global market. And we need to be ready for that because it ain't going away. Those decisions need to be made and they need to be made together. But I think enough talking. Let's get to the point. I'll hand you over to our Master of Ceremonies, the famous Nadine Chalmers-Ross.